At the forefront of international diplomacy and relations, in a more connected world, Africa again resonates its voice at the 2024 Africa-China Cooperation FOCAC. However, we are going deep into a pressing question. At the forefront of international diplomacy, Africa at the FOCAC, are the AU's collective effort still stalled? As the 9th Forum on China-Africa Cooperation unfolds in Beijing from the 4th to the 6th of September 2024, the spotlight is on the absence of a unified African Union delegation to represent the continent at this significant multilateral meeting. Instead, we witness individual African nations participating separately in what many may argue should be a collective representation under the umbrella of the African Union. This year's FOCAC summit gathers over 50 African leaders, showcasing, of course, a collective engagement with China, but significant questions arise regarding the lack of unified representation of African interest. What implications does this have on strengthening political ties, economic opportunities, and sustainable development across the African continent? Also, as China pledges extensive financial commitments coupled with its vision of building a high-level China-Africa community with a shared future, we must analyze how African states can harness these opportunities while addressing internal fragmentation. Together with a panel of experts, we want to dissect the current dynamics shaping Africa-China relations and equally explore the future of the African Union in its role as a representative voice for the continent on the global stage. Stay tuned, for this is Global Insight. Mbote Africa and Mbote to the world at large. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of Global Insight on For You Media Africa. Today we want to discuss relations between the People's Republic of China and the African continent, taking focus on the 2024 FOCAC summit holding in Beijing, China. But now our focus this day is to analyze the lack of a collective effort from the African Union, as we see that the gathering has attracted a whole lot of African countries from Africa, representing the respective nations. To note also that the African Union Commission is one of the members of FOCAC. So what are the implications of this setting, and of course what encompasses the failure of a collective effort from the African Union, that is Africa's #1 institutions? And of course we are going to uncover during the program the spheres of diplomacy, collaboration, and even the complexities of a collective effort in Africa in a world of multipolarity. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I will now introduce to you this panel of panel of experts to elucidate more on our focal point today, of course, which highlights the failure of the AU's collective efforts in ensuring or engaging in multilateral meetings, taking FOCAC 2024 to be a focal point. Let's go to the United States of America. We're being joined by Achille, who is a banker and of course international financial expert. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Clarisse. Thank you very much for inviting me. I want to say hello to all the Pan-African, TV viewers out there in the world that are watching this show and other shows of this channel. And I want to thank the technicians and all the people that are making this show very live and very interesting for viewers to watch. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir, for accepting to share light or shed light on this very important topic. To Ghana, let's welcome Fidel Owusu, international relations expert who doubles as a security expert. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity once again, and I appreciate the fact that I get to speak on your esteemed platform once again. Thank you.
And thank you for giving it importance, which is very imperative in charting the African agenda. The voices of Africans at the fore will help to reshape, of course, some of the decisions taken by our leaders. And today we are still focusing on the fact that in spite of the various debates which we've had at every level, patterning the role of the African Union in charting a clear trajectory for Africa in engaging as a collective entity. We still notice that above or over 50 countries assembled in China to discuss under the auspices of FOCAC to also analyze to what extent China relationship, China-Africa ties have gone. But today, let's give a holistic understanding of our topic of discussion with you, Mr. Owusu, as we continue to ask the question if the African Union collective effort are still stalled as far as engaging at the global levels concerned.
Thank you very much, Madam.
Hello, Mr. Owusu.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Firstly, I would like to say that the FOCAC is one of the many forums where African countries get to be invited to discuss trade, to discuss development, to discuss finance and other issues of importance. About a year ago, we found African leaders going to the United States, Washington, to meet President Biden, to also discuss the issues like this. We found Indonesia doing same, Russia, Turkey, and many other great powers and middle powers doing this kind of conferences where African leaders get to be invited and all that. Now, I've always said that African countries cannot do it alone when it comes to development. They will need the support of other powers. In fact, in the developmental trajectory of every entity, you need supporters. However, the most important thing is to prioritize your interest or your collective interest as Africans. That is the most important thing. Because then no country gives out free lunch. No country will dole out money for nothing. No country would like to give you anything for free. Even when you are being given grants, you know that there are some strings attached or you get to pay somehow later. So that is very important to keep it at the back of our minds while we engage with great powers. And I think that is very fundamental. Then we'll talk about the history behind China and Africa. And that is very interesting. Unlike many of the European countries, China did not colonize Africa, any part of Africa. And in fact, the current political system that China practices started in 1949. Almost at the same time that African countries were fighting for their independence. So in the 50s and the 60s, when countries like Ghana, Kenya, Mali, Guinea, and others gained independence, they started engaging with the PRC. Especially in East Africa, Tanzania and other countries benefited a lot from China in those days. But it was at a time when Mao Zedong used to be the leader of China. And so most of these were more of Maoist or communist support that was given to other comrades that they found in Africa. And because China was a communist state, it had a lot of rough experience with the rest of the world in that Taiwan was rather recognized and given the Security Council seat in the UN, and the PRC was marginalized. It took the 1970s when Nixon and other leaders visited China to open the way for modern-day China to get into the UN system and to be recognized. And so China has come a long way. And over the years, after Mao Zedong passed, Deng Xiaoping led these reforms in the country that had led to tremendous development of the country. They've lifted over 500 million people out of poverty.
Sure.
Africa has not been able to do that. They've done a lot of things. They've infrastructure development, huge dams, agricultural transformation. If you look at cities like Shanghai and other cities, these are cities that look like New York and other places, and sometimes even more sophisticated. And so China has come a long way. And so any partnership with China is in the right direction. However, in recent times, we've had issues of debt trap that people have mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't really see it as debt trap. I have always seen it as irresponsible borrowing on the part of some African countries. And so in engaging with Africa, the collective interest, as you mentioned, is very important. But having all African leaders there and the AU also present is something that we have to take a second look at.
Okay.
Because then if we are going there collectively, then we don't need all leaders to be there. We have instances where the EU have a foreign policy chief who becomes the mouthpiece of EU foreign policy, apart from what foreign ministers do. So we can have the same thing, but ours looks like we often paint the AU to be a united front, but in reality, it has no teeth to bite. That is my preliminary statement. And so as we go on, I will add others and when it comes up. Thank you very much, Madam.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Owusu. In the same perspective with you, Mr. Ekeu, we want to analyze the overview of this statement or a topic for discussion this day, and of course wanting to have a holistic approach of the topic from you, which of course we title under Africa's or African Union missed opportunity at FOCAC.
Thank you, Madam. The Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, the FOCAC, is a vital platform for strengthening ties between China and African nations. Yet the continued absence of a unified African Union delegation at this forum highlights a significant missed opportunity for the continent. Instead of presenting a collective front, African countries engage with China on a bilateral basis, which fragments their bargaining power and undermines the potential for cohesive strategy. FOCAC's bilateral nature allows individual African nations to negotiate based on their specific needs, but this approach can lead to inconsistent agreements that do not align with broader continental goals. The AU, the African Union, ideally positioned to represent Africa's collective interest, has been limited to a coordinating role due to internal divisions and diverse national priorities among its member states. While China's involvement in Africa through FOCAC has led to infrastructure development and increased trade, it also raises concerns about debt sustainability and economic dependency. A unified African Union could better address these challenges, ensuring that Africa's long-term growth and sovereignty are not compromised by China's strategic interests. For the African Union to leverage its full potential at fora like FOCAC, it must overcome internal divisions and prioritize a collective approach. By doing so, the African Union can transform FOCAC from a series of bilateral engagements into a platform for genuine continental collaboration. The time for a unified African strategy is now, and FOCAC offers the perfect opportunity to begin this journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Achille Ekeu. Let me stay with you from the point you highlighted on the unified Africa. So, in your perspective, what specific steps do you think the African Union could take to promote a more unified delegation at future multilateral summits, including FOCAC?
Well, before we talk about that, it would be nice to just talk about what is FOCAC in even the quick history about that, that forum. What we call the FOCAC today was established in October 2000, in Beijing as the platform for collective consultation and dialogue between China and African nations.
Sure.
It aims to, this forum aims at enhancing political dialogue and economic cooperation, serving as a key mechanism for developing countries, in Latin Africa, and to engage in pragmatic partnerships. The evolution of FOCAC has been done through different phases. Initially, it was focused on trade and economic cooperation, and later expanded to include infrastructure, health and cultural exchanges as well. So the forum has facilitated significant Chinese investments in Africa, therefore contributing to infrastructure and development and also economic growth across the continent. So what to answer your question, what Africa has to do is to unite. Definitely, the idea of going to different fora like this is one of the many. Every year, head of states travel miles away from the continent to meet individually. And that always, as my partner in this panel mentioned, Mr. Owusu, we can be having a strategy in a continent where every head of state has to go and negotiate on a bilateral basis with a country like China. China is it's a big superpower, and it's got means to really get what it wants. So the only leverage that we in poor countries like in Africa, poor country, but potentially rich countries, we have potential to be very rich, of course. But right now, what we see is that we are not united, and therefore we are weak. And by being weak, we can't negotiate anything in favor of us. And that is the challenge for us. So Africa has to overcome. And I mentioned that there are different views, there are different understandings, different interests between its member states, within African Union. Sure. So we have to overcome those differences, and that is something that has to be done. There's no way to go around that. So we have to find a way to unite, to have the same agenda. So when we go and meet with, leaders and leading countries like China, Europe, and UN, United States, we can speak in one voice and defend our interests in a way that serves our strategic, purpose. So if we go separately, like we're doing right now, we are certain to lose. So the strategy here, to answer your question, is to unite.
Absolutely,
we can make that unity happen in different ways, but we can get into that later in the conversation. But really, that's the answer to the question. We have to unite.
Indeed, unite to safeguard the interest of the African continent. And of course, this topic is coming timely because February 2025 will be witnessing the election of the new African Union Commission. And now this brings us to another question directing to you, Mr. Owusu. Still looking at the fact that aside the 53 African nations which are part of FOCAC, we also have the African Union Commission as an independent body in this forum that brings together African states and the People's Republic of China. So looking at all of these and the pressing calls which have been coming from across the continent for the total reform of the African Union, and of course the practicality coming from the African Union Commission. So let's look at already now how the absence of a collective AU delegation or representation at FOCAC is, undermining the benefit or the strategic advantage or competitive advantage of Africa as a continent at this particular important forum, FOCAC, and how the current state of African unity and representation for this fragmentation of course fragmentation of the African continent and representation in global forums is actually a setback with this available scope.
Yeah. So firstly, we have to discuss what the AU Commission is about.
Sure.
The AU Commission is supposed to be the administrative as well as the working part of the AU. That is the consequential part of the AU that takes decisions, make sure that, when decisions are made, they do the implementation of the decision. They try to bring synchronize continental goals and see how they are projected. Now with that comes with a lot of challenges, conflict, rebellions, conflict includes rebellions, inter-ethnic clashes, secessionist groups, and all that. We still have a continent that faces hunger or famine from time to time, especially in the Horn of Africa, in East Africa. Even in South Africa in recent times, we've had drought and things like that. We still have challenges like unemployment. There are so many of them. But the issue is, having a commission is one thing, and the commission working for people or lifting people out of poverty or having impact on people is another. So then, how do we synchronize the various interests? One of the major issues that I see with the African Union Commission has to do with the pretense that all African states are equal. And it's something that I consistently say. Look, yes, in terms of sovereignty, we have 54 sovereign states in Africa. But some are having weightier, or some are more or heavier in terms of economic weight. In terms of economic weight, in terms of military might, in terms of technical capacity, in terms of production capacity, and things like that, resources. And so the heavyweights like Algeria, Nigeria, Ethiopia, South Africa, Egypt, and others should be given more weight in their leadership. So why am I saying this? What has this got to do with the commission? Yes, from what we've seen in Europe, with the European Union and other places, when a commission is backed by more powerful internal actors, it becomes more consequential. For instance, the backing of Germany and the role that France, Germany, Italy, and other powerful economies in Europe play in making sure that the European Commission has stick to back.
Sure.
That is what we need in Africa. But then when we all pretend that we are all equal, then you find, excuse me to say, maybe an island like Seychelles negotiating with China, and then Nigeria also negotiating with China. And that is not the same, because the Nigerian and South African economy are far way bigger. They are way bigger than Seychelles or even a Republic of Togo. And so we have to, first of all, make that happen. When we are able to get the internal things right, then the commission can become consequential. These days, as people are lobbying for the commission to sit on the seat, my question has never been who sits on the seat, or my concern has never been who sits on the seat. My concern has been, what would the person do? The doing is the most important thing. If we had the commissioner just being in Beijing and negotiating on behalf of the continent, it would have been fantastic. As Mr. Ekeu mentioned, it has been fantastic. But who is going to sit home for the AU or the commission to do its work? Everybody would like to have a feel of what Beijing is. Everybody will want to be chauffeur from the airport. And the Chinese do very well when it comes to this kind of things. Their warm reception and other things is one of the top notch around the world. They make African leaders feel like equals whenever they reach Beijing. But in reality, we are not equals. Some countries are more powerful. They have more weight. And when you are negotiating with them, it's very difficult to really be at par with them. They may give you all the respect, But when it comes to economic negotiation, security negotiation, and other negotiation, respect, it goes beyond respect. Respect is not all it takes to get those things right. And so I think that, as you mentioned, we have to get at our alternative. We have to give more weight to the bigger economies so that when they lead the way, they create the vortex that pulls the rest of us along, and then we can get somewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's about putting the interest of the continent first. Just before coming to you, Mr. Ekeu, just to try to analyze or compare the aspect of putting the strategic interest of a nation or a continent first before considering other aspects. We just saw Mongolia defining or reiterating that it could not arrest Russian President Vladimir Putin because of its strategic position or relations or diplomatic relations with Russia that depend heavily on Russia and other neighbors for petroleum and other very essential resources. Now let's come back. Africa has its developmental agenda and the flagship agenda, which is Agenda 2063. We are talking multipolarity in present-day context, and we are also talking multilateralism as far as Africa is concerned, and the present international stakes of international relations. Now, how can we gain this competitive or this added advantage of this developmental agenda set under the Africa We Want mantra, Agenda 2063, and use the platform of FOCAC to, advocate for these situations that will redefine the trajectory, developmental trajectory of the African continent under the banner of the African Union.
Listen to me?
Sure, Mr. Ekeu.
Yes. Well, listen, in every relationship or any business relationship, we have to find a way to, win or to make people consider your interest, and you have to fight for your interest. So everything starts there. What is it that we want? When we go to a meeting, a business meeting, we have to have an agenda, and we have to, try to discuss our agenda with the partner that we're meeting to let him know, okay, even though we're meeting under this pretense, this is what we are looking to achieve. How can we make sure that, our collaboration helps us achieve our goal? And so once you have that, agenda in place and all the details about what you're going to negotiate on, what you're going to discuss with your partners, then, you go to the meeting prepared, and then you meet the person, the partner, and then you have the conversation, and it becomes a give and take. You discuss, you give, and then they give, and then you get to an agreement, and then you sign the agreement. So everybody wins. But if you are not prepared, you go to a meeting and then you just sit there, you wake up in the morning, you go to the meeting, and then you just sit there and listen to your partner talk. Well, what does that, tell the partner? It tells the partner that in effect, you came to the meeting not being prepared, and, so they are the one organizing the meeting. They will, tell you what to do, and you just receive and then go home. And that's not the way we should function. And this is what we're doing right now. So the African Union and its secretary and its, the AU Commission, they have the responsibility of putting together, all the different parties within the continent that are not agreeing on the agendas for every meeting, and put them together in a room and discuss the ins and outs of the and then figure out, how to come out of that meeting with one voice. And then so that when we go to those meetings, we have the opportunity to speak in one voice, and therefore use that leverage, to get what we want. So for what I see right now, I'm sorry, that's not the case. There are so many different challenges still, that we're facing. And that's going to put Africa always in a position of a loser in any transaction that we operate in. Now, in going into bilateral meetings, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Oof, I have a little cold here.
Sorry.
So in going in a bilateral way that that FOCAC is advocating, it weakens our position. It just seems like we are going there in very dispersed without any set agenda. We are going to negotiate one-on-one with China, and China is going to be able to put forth its vision, and you as a country are not able to match that vision because you don't have the scale, you don't have the capacity to be able to face China and get what you want, unless you are in a strategic position compared to other countries. Now, depending on the sector, so whether it's military sector, a strategic sector in terms of technology, some countries have a bigger leverage than others. That's fine. But when it comes to negotiating, our leaders, they have to have also the knowledge, the understanding, and the experience of negotiating with big superpowers. And I don't think right now we are in that position. So when we go negotiating, we don't really use all our leverage to be able to get the best that we can in those relationships. So hence the situation that we face today, all over the continent. So so what I would say with that, to answer that question is whether it's on a multilateral level or bilateral level, we have to unite. We have to have the same agenda, regardless of which country is meeting a partner. But we have to have a goal, and that starts with the Agenda 2063 vision that you mentioned earlier. Sure. That agenda is like the main vision that Africa has for 2063. But in order to implement that vision, it has to be delineated in a way that allows every country to work towards that vision, within the capacity it has. Absolutely. And in order to delineate that, we also have to have that kind of united focus all over the continent, so that every part of that vision is being effectively put in motion, so that we can all achieve that vision within the time frame that's allowed. So that's the way I think it should be going.
Indeed, achieving the vision of the African continent. Just to note, ladies and gentlemen, that this is Global Insight on For You Media Africa. Today, we are analyzing the ongoing FOCAC or 2024 FOCAC Summit in Beijing, looking at the position of the African continent, which becomes very problematic given that over 50 countries are part of this summit, attending at the individual level, and at the African Union Commission also being represented as a separate entity. And we're asking the question of what has happened to the collective effort of the continent in charting the African agenda in this present world of changing dynamics. And to note, before bringing this question to you, Mr. Owusu, President Xi Jinping of China has actually, pledged an above $50 billion fund for the continent Africa. And we also note that when he was addressing the many leaders attending the significant forum, he highlighted that it has come a time where China and the African continent will have to engage in a relationship that will encompass all weather in the new era, which, of course, this new era, we see a new era of heightened geopolitical contestation, and a new era of multipolarity coming with, of course, the BRICS bloc. We see each and every day members are adding, and of course, how can China then help Africa to bolster this solidarity in the continent to capitalize on the scope of 21st century international cooperation and diplomacy?
I think it's gone.
Okay, you may wish to respond to that question, Mr. Ekeu.
Yes. Well, the continent has a bright future in front of it. It's got a generation of young leaders. There is a youth that is very unemployed right now that has so much skills, but they're not. They don't have the means to be able to put those skills to work so far. Because of practical issues, political issues, economic issues, as well as strategic issues within the continent. But the population in the continent is growing, and then so that growth is going to be able to fuel, the growth of Africa in the future. So there's a lot of opportunities in the continent, and everybody in the world is seeing that. United States, Europeans, Chinese, Russians, everybody, they look at Africa now differently because they see the potential. And so they think it's going to be a partner, whether we want it or not, we have to deal with Africa, regardless of what our feelings are. And so therefore, everybody has to figure out a way to win market shares, in that continent. And so, the issue that we have so far for African is, what is it that we want? We don't know yet what we want, but we have a vision already. That is good, and that's a good start. So once we are in a position to organize ourselves, and to put together, the different tools that are going to allow us to be able to speak, in equally, to our partners, then that will give us the leverage to be able to have these fruitful relationships with other partners, knowing that we're not in the losing end anymore. We can therefore build our society, build our continent, develop our continent, knowing exactly where we're going, based on the vision that has been determined by our leaders. China can help us in different ways, and that's one of the things that this summit, does, is that it's going to emphasize practical cooperation with Africa, trying to agree on new measures to enhance trade and investments, for example. And this is going to include some infrastructure development, agricultural modernization, and industrialization, which are crucial for Africa's economic growth and diversification. And so we also note that both sides are focused on advancing modernization efforts, aligning with Africa's Agenda 2063, as I mentioned earlier, and China's own development goals. So, so this is a win-win for both sides. And so this cooperation between the two sides, has a goal to support Africa's manufacturing sector, as well as improve food security and cultivate talents, across the continent. So that will therefore foster, our development in a sustainable way. So, and one of the objectives also of this FOCAC meeting, FOCAC summit, is to highlight the importance of addressing Africa's infrastructure funding gap.
Absolutely, yes.
That is the main issue here. So China is trying to support us with strong projects that will enhance connectivity and regional integration within the continent. So those are the type of efforts that we appreciate from real partners like China and Russia. For the past 60 years or more, the cooperation with the West has been, mostly very minimal. And so today they face competition, and we can see how those countries are struggling to catch up with what Russia and China are doing on the continent.
Absolutely.
And so in Africa today are being awakened, so they see the difference between the two cooperation, and they have a feeling that cooperating with the Eastern countries, China, China and Russia and India and others is more beneficial, because they have the same understanding of development as that we have, and so that is what I would say about that question. Thank you.
Which is very imperative, Mr. Ekeu, to note that, of course, China won't be more intentional than the African continent. It is time for the continent to define its own objectives of how to survive in this new world order, and of course talking about multilateral engagement for the benefit of the continent. And of course with Africa, it can only be feasible under the institutional bloc, the African Union. And of course, what is the scope, or what are those factors impeding the practicality of the African Union in functioning as one, especially when it has to do with engaging into diplomatic affairs at the global level. Before we come back to also analyze some pertinent issues, let's just try to listen to one of the African leaders who is present in Beijing. That is the president of Kenya, His Excellency William Ruto, who actually on the 4th of September, while addressing the platform, reiterated or asserted that the Chinese government and private sector government engagement, I beg your pardon, is needed in seeking financing solutions in Africa, particularizing with Kenya. Of course, let's listen to this excerpt of President William Ruto, and then we come back for better clarification and understanding of our topic for discussion. Thank you.
All the countries from Kenya all the way to Congo-Brazzaville have agreed, and the Chinese government has also agreed. I think the only item standing in the way is a financing structure. We are prepared as a government of Kenya to make a contribution. I did ask CCCC to consider also investing, and then again we need to find together a financing mechanism, and I think it is time for us to engage the Chinese government and also possibly the Chinese private sector in finding a solution, a financing solution, because the necessity of having this infrastructure is agreed across the region, and it's not a Kenyan project. It is actually a regional project in line with the Belt and Road Initiative of the Chinese government. On the energy and power space, it is, as you know, Kenya is a largely renewable energy country, and we have set ourselves a target for 2030 to have 100% renewable energy in our grid. Your participation in that space is a very welcome development. We've just concluded the first PPP project on energy transmission, and we believe that that is the direction we will be considering. So the transmission power lines that you're interested in, we now have a framework where we can work together under a private-public partnership arrangement to deliver power to different parts of Kenya, apart from your efforts in generation around wind there are opportunities around solar as well, but I think your target on wind energy is a very appropriate target.
Just a snippet of what President William Ruto advocated at the ongoing FOCAC summit in Virginia. Let's come back to you, Mr. Ekeu, and of course understanding still the position of Africa because it's our focal point. And let's look at the geopolitical implications of a fragmented Africa standing at the global level in terms of its negotiating power and how important it can gain the scope for it to gain an upper hand in negotiating some continental projects. We talked about seeing Africa as a continent that produces rather than a continent that only consumes.
Okay, well, see, this is the issue when we go to this type of meetings, separately, without any overarching goal that we've discussed beforehand. So the absence of a unified African delegation at that forum could be attributed to several factors, notably first one of the things that we can agree. I mean, with what the FOCAC forum itself, it facilitates bilateral agreements between China and individual countries, which might discourage collective representation. But we, as an African, if we were going there, under the auspices of the African Union, we could, change that way of doing business, to our advantage. And so we don't have that capacity of doing it right now because we haven't done it. And so we are going separate, and that's to the disadvantage of the continent, because we don't have a vision. Therefore, every country is going to do what they want with China and might not come out of it, better off, compared to where if we had gone there with one strategy. And so, and also even though the African Union Commission is a member of FOCAC, the African Union role has been more about coordinating rather than direct representation, which is another issue, because that limits the African Union's ability to act as a single voice for the continent, And so, on the economic front, China is Africa's largest trading partner, which extends with extensive investments in infrastructure, energy, and manufacturing sectors. We already agree on that. This cooperation, this partnership is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, as we understand it, and is aimed at enhancing connectivity and economic integration. On the strategic interest front, China also seeks to secure, different accesses to Africa's raw materials, especially minerals that are very crucial to its industries. So, in return, African countries hopefully will benefit from infrastructure development and financial investment, even though concerns about the sustainability and economic dependency, persist. But in order for us to leverage that, we have to be able to unite, and it comes back to the same issue, because when you look at China uses FOCAC as a platform to strengthen its diplomatic influence in Africa. So therefore, seeking more support from African nations on international fora, like the United Nations, for example. But what are we doing in Africa to have our views, supported by Europeans and Chinese and other countries on the world support our agendas? We don't have a platform that is strong enough to be able to influence, events. So it's become very complicated to be able to go, you know, on that kind of basis, you know. So what I would say is that definitely the imperative here is for us to have one voice, to speak in one voice, so that people can take us seriously instead of sending leaders all the time traveling the world to really for no avail, and they don't get anything done, and at the end they are they come out of it with so much debt they can't reimburse those debts, and therefore they start using their raw materials to reimburse those debt. And as we discussed on this panel once, the president of the African Bank Development wanted to prohibit the use of our raw materials as means to repay debt. And so I think that's a wish. So far it hasn't been decided on that yet, but that's what he wants. But what we see is that things haven't changed. So that's where we are right now.
Indeed, we are at a very crucial point, Mr. Ekeu. Just to highlight to those who are just tuning in that this is Global Insight on For You Media Africa, a discursive program that brings to light topical issues, particularly of utmost interest to the African continent, while analyzing the position of Africa as the world is engaging in the creation of major powers, engaged in the creation of a new world order. Where is the scope for Africa? And of course, how intentional are the leaders, political leaders, stakeholders, and even civil society, the class, in ensuring that Africa also benefits from these changing dynamics coming at every level, be it at the social, economic, and particularly at the political sphere? What the competitive advantage for the continent Africa? With today, we are still focusing on FOCAC, China-Africa Cooperation Summit, which is holding and which kick-started from on the 4th and will culminate on the 6th of September 2024. But now we want to analyze the stakes for Africa, given that over 50 African countries attended this summit as sovereign state rather than a collective representation under the auspices of the African Union Commission. What are the stakes and what are some of these complexities making it very difficult for Africa to have a collective front when addressing issues of general importance, especially to note that during the opening ceremony of the summit, we saw the leadership of China, Xi Jinping, addressing Africa as an entity. Then represented at individual level, it becomes very problematic, Mr. Ekeu. And let's try to understand some of those difficulties or setbacks holding Africa from being practical in ensuring a collective effort or collective standing at the international level on international meetings like FOCAC. Is it the setting of the African Union, foreign policy that makes it difficult for the continent to stand as an entity on multilateral meetings for the benefits of the continent?
Well, that is the key issue, that you put your finger on what the issues are. And we look at it, and there are several issues that are really, preventing Africans from speaking in one voice. There are several issues, and we can talk about them. First, there are political issues,
sure.
Political will and governance issues, right? Mm-hmm. So there is often insufficient political will among our leaders to empower our regional institutions and commit to common norms. This reluctance, weakens the effectiveness of the African Union and its initiative. And also in terms of poor governance, there's poor governance and leadership within member states that affect the overall governance at the African Union level. So the quality of leadership is crucial for the union's success, and disparities in government standards across countries also hinder collective progress. So this is on the political front. On the institutional front, they are weak. We have very weak institutions. The African Union's legislative or judicial and even technical organs are relatively weak compared to the Assembly of Head of State and governors and government. So there are those bodies, like the Pan-African Parliament, as well as the African Court of Human and People's Rights. Those kind of bodies lack the power to enforce decisions. And therefore, it limits their effectiveness, and so, and then in terms of implementing, decisions that are taken at the AU level, the AU faces and the African Union faces difficulties, in implementing its economic development frameworks, such, as the Partnership for Africa Development, for example, and this is due to weak institutional capacity and the lack of consultation with the civil society as a whole. So on the economic front, there is so much external dependency. We depend so much heavily on external funding, which undermines, the financial autonomy of the African Union and its ability to implement its own agenda independently. So member states, often fail to pay their contributions on time, and that's a big issue, and that's because it exacerbates the financial instability of that organization. On the historical front, also the colonial history has left Africa also with governance structures that are not, conducive to unity and development. And so structurally, we have an issue there. So these structures often, prioritize resources, resource extraction, for example, over sustainable development. And so, we have political appointments and governance that are sometimes influenced by ethnic and religious considerations, and which can lead to divisions and conflict within the member countries. And lastly, on the security front, we have chronic instability on the continent, because we have many African regions that are plagued with political instability, ethnic divisions, as well as conflicts fueled by terrorism and armed groups. So these issues, obviously disrupt different efforts towards unity and development. So in order for us to really overcome the different challenges that I just mentioned, addressing, it will require a concerted effort to strengthen, the different issues that we have: political will, improve governance, enhance institutional capacity, and even foster economic integration. So the Agenda 2063, its aim is to address those different issues, and also achieve its goal that will really depend on overcoming these challenges that are persistent on our continent.
And of course, how can we attain the Africa we want, the mantra of the Developmental Agenda 2063, if we remain, separated, it should be noted that presently across the African continent, just to mention a few, there are lots of diplomatic fields which we begin to ask the question of the possibility of a collective effort from the African Union. We see Egypt, Ethiopia, and Somalia Somalia, you see Ethiopia and Eritrea, and many, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, and many other countries that you can mention, looking at how, this discord among countries across the African continent actually an impediment to the realization of the dream of an African unity, and which of course it's working to the benefits of other countries that capitalize on the discord among African nations to maybe carve their sphere for political or strategic or geostrategic interest, and which is something what resonating as we continue to bring forth the topical issues which are of utmost importance for the transformation of the African continent. What do you think about that, Mr. Ekeu?
Oh, absolutely. What you say is exactly what we've been saying, and I think it seems that Mr. Owusu is back.
Okay,
so
okay.
just wanted to know. And so yeah, it seems that it's an important. These are issues that the continent has to face. We cannot develop ourselves without overcoming the challenges that I just mentioned. And those different aspects, those different challenges are sometimes structural. Very structural, and they're not designed. So our economies are not really designed to work for our own benefits. The structure of our economies are designed to serve the masters, to serve the colonial powers, and so we have to change that. And in order for it to change that, we have to have leaders that are willing to do the hard work. And like what we see in the Sahelian countries today, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, they understand that structurally they are not designed to be self-sustained countries, that could really thrive, on the hard work and all the resources that they have, the mineral resources that they have, and use it to their own benefit. No, it's designed. The way the structure is designed to serve France, to serve United States, and all the Western countries. Mm-hmm. So they have to, so the leaders that we see right now are the ones that are really, trying to change those structures, those structural deficiencies that we see in our economy, in the economies. And unless we achieve that, and we're not, and also bring in more countries within the Sahelian community, the Sahelian alliance. Right now they're a confederation of an alliance of Sahelian states. So if more countries would join, that would be the opportunity to African countries to, get together and structurally change, the design of those of their countries. And then change so that it's more beneficial to them. So the mindset has to change. So the leaders are very important here. If we keep having those poor leaders that come to power, they talk a great deal during the campaign. When they get to power, they do the exact opposite of what they promised the population. Mm-hmm. That we are going to be in a vicious cycle, and we are going to be running around without going anywhere. So I think that's the solution. We have to have visionary leaders that are able to take decisive decisions to change the structure of our economies, the structure of our political systems, and so that we can have that freedom of deciding what exactly that we want for our own, people.
Indeed, it shows that the stakes are really high for the African continent. And to attain this milestone, there is need for a lot of sacrifices and even compromises. Most importantly, collaboration to see that, we take the position that Africa deserves, a continent that is rich in both human and natural resources. But then how can we capitalize on these valuable assets to be able to define and make a strong case concerning the African position at the international level in this era of dynamism in this era of multi-polarity. It's time to take decisive decisions, and these decisions will need that compromise to come. If Mr. Owusu has rejoined, I'll welcome you back, sir, by directing this question to you. Of course, looking at the position of Africa when it comes to international relations and engaging practically at a multipolar level. Now, we can see that the global crisis have actually exposed the position of many countries in Africa. You know, others are shifting to the east, others shifting to the west. But then we see that in the time of such global contestations, countries try to bring forth some sort of a strategic position without, by adopting a balanced foreign policy that will not undermine its internal interests, especially in terms of engaging with countries at loggerhead. So now let's look at the place of the African Union being that solution to the countries, you know, bringing together the countries aligning to the east and those aligning to the west under the banner of the African Union to arrive this position of taking, you know, a unanimous decision on global representation on multilateral meetings like FOCAC and others.
Yeah. So representation is very important, and like Mr. Ekeu mentioned, we have to look within for robust decisions. Now, one thing about development is you cannot develop if that development is not already. Where I would like to depart from Mr. Ekeu is the fact that I don't see that to be coming from dictators. You can have a dictator or a military ruler who may have good intention, but because of the very make of African country, different ethnicities in one country, it is very difficult to have one military ruler dictate or seemingly not using democratic process to rule. So you can have good leaders within the democratic system who the interest of the people and use African solutions for African problems. Now, this does not also mean we have to kowtow or we have to condone corrupt elected leaders. Because in Africa, when people get elected, we have many people getting very corrupt, looting this, and engaging in parochial interests, where they tend to, cut deals, favor their selfish interests, as opposed to the collective interest of the country. Another thing too is that which ways can we use to have collective representation very short? Now, African countries producing cocoa, that's Ghana, Cameroon, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, especially, coming together to say that this is where we want to put the price of cocoa. It is when we start doing our representation can be taken serious. But if Ghana goes to negotiate for different prices for cocoa, Cameroon does different, Nigeria does it differently, and Cote d'Ivoire, the #1 producer in the world, does it different, then we have nowhere to. Lithium is a very important resource that is going to be very instrumental in the electric vehicle industry. With that, all the countries that have, Ghana has, Zimbabwe, other countries, what is the deal? We may not have the capital now. You can engage China, but you tell China that this percentage of that percentage of my lithium is not going outside my country. That in the fact you set up with me, you have set up so that I can invest or I can put value on it and then get the youth employed, get some capital being created within my own country, rather than taking all these resources outside the country. Another thing is that we must open our own borders to ourselves. The borders within Africa, we must open. If I take a vehicle, I should be able to drive Uganda without anybody stopping me for any frustration or anything. If I engage in some orange farm, my colleague is in Uganda and need that orange to sell, we should be able to transport that orange without any impediment. This would our representation to be consequential. This will help us have representation. In terms of security, our militaries cooperate or coordinate so that we have collective security. We must not go so when it comes to security, because security is a collective responsibility. It's not one country. If Ghana decides to protect border and Togo's border is compromised, Ghanaian citizens will not be safe. Then, when people, radicals or when criminals more radical, they will come to Ghana. So we need that collective security. And Nkrumah mentioned this African Unity Command or Military High Command for Africa. He mentioned this in the 50s. We did not take it serious, and it has come back to Hunter. So these are the things. If you would be respected, if you will be well represented, if you are united from, it must be tangible decision, tangible cooperation that sees results, and that is only when we can be taken serious. And that is when we attend this conference, whatever we will say will be taken seriously. Other than that, what is before the cameras will be different from what actually happens on the. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Owusu. Thank you for sharing your perspective on this. And of course, it is a collective effort still from the African continent, African stakeholders to continue to share their voice, to make their voices resonate on the issues that concern Africa, so that those at the decision-making table can be more considerate. And of course, it will widen the horizon for them when taking decisions that will affect, the future of Africa. And of course, let's come back to you from the economic perspective. Mr. Ekeu, you were talking earlier, you quite mentioned a lot regarding the debt crisis and every other aspect. Just to note that the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres actually as part of the FOCAC summit, and he made mention about this debt relief issue, which according to him will go a long way already to solving the many social problems that the African continent is facing. We can note that Kenya, we saw Kenya, the unrest, and of course Nigeria, the social unrest where countries are, especially the youthful population, calling for more practical reforms that would upgrade the living standards of the population. So let's look at under the banner of FOCAC. So can we talk of a practical debt relief strategy patterning this relationship between China and the African continent?
Well, the debt relief, it's not African countries have no say in terms of the debt relief issue. They can have wishes, but China is the one that is financing the infrastructure building that's happening across the continent. And what our leaders have to do is really to use those infrastructure in a way that can allow them to recoup, to be able to recoup the financing, the debt that they use, to finance the infrastructure and pay back China. But our leaders are very corrupt, and we see that in every country, in every, on every infrastructure, in every, all the different infrastructure that China has built. We see that paying back those debt has become very difficult for our continent, because there is so much poverty, corruption, all these things that we know, and these are really preventing those countries from being able to use those infrastructure that were built by Chinese companies in an efficient manner, collect the fees, and then pay back, the loan. So what happens is at the end, they start using different ways to repay the loan, and sometimes China has to, take control of some of the existing infrastructure already, for a certain time frame, and these are creating, fury across the continent. People are outraged about those methods. So the issue is what is that we have to figure out, how, and this is where those contracts, those debt, that the debt that we are taking with China to fund those infrastructure buildings. What are the details about these deals? And this is important to understand the details. And going alone, it's very dangerous. This is what we keep saying. Negotiating on a bilateral level, it's not a good strategy for Africa. We have to go united on this, in a way that allows us to be able to negotiate every repayment term on these debts that we are contracting. So if we don't do that, then each country is going to negotiate, individually and have different, set of rules and so the contract is going to be very different, for every country, and therefore there are reasons to understand that by going alone like that, there's a possibility of negotiating, political interest, individual interests, and all kind of shenanigans, within the terms of the loan, that allows those political people who are only interested in their personal interests, to put in all kind of technique, to use all kind of technique, retro commissions and all kind of stuff, that they're not supposed to do, and creating a situation where it's very hard for the country to repay the loan. Sure. So the issue of debt relief is China's decision. And what we've observed is that, and this is why European countries are sounding the alarm. They have a feeling that even though China is relieving a lot of debt, those debt are insignificant compared to the totality of the debt that we've incurred. And so they are afraid that, we are going to be in a position that we are very weak, in order for us to be able to negotiate with other partners. But we know the Europeans have their own agenda. They've been around for hundreds of years. They are used to taking our resources for free. So they don't, they're not coming there like they are saints. No, we know that they are not happy to see us discuss with other partners. Even though they raise those concerns, we know those are crocodile tears, right? So they're just pretending to support us, to care about us. But in reality, it's for their own interests that they're doing that. They're trying to divert us from, building partnership with other partners, and stay with them. But we've tried that for hundreds of years. It has led to where Africa is today, very broke, very poor, and with a generation of youth that is growing unemployed, desperate to find jobs, that are traveling miles away, dying in waters, in sea, and all kind of stuff, because they're looking for ways to have a better living condition. So it's really difficult. But many African countries, when it comes to high debt level, have accumulated significant debt from Chinese loans, often used for infrastructure projects under initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative. Recently, China's loans to Africa have been very substantial, and with countries like Djibouti, for example, who and even Angola, that are heavily indebted to China. So you see that these loans often come with relatively short repayment periods compared to multilateral institutions, that are making them challenging to service. So it's one of the key things that we see here is that it's very difficult to repay those loans because the terms are very short, and short-term loans are difficult to repay if you're not very organized. You know, and you're not very organized, you don't have a good structure, it's going to be difficult. So some kind of, some call it predatory loans, things like that. But, you know, it's our responsibilities, you know, to be able to be better organized, put, you know, this infrastructure, the tools in place to be able to, you know, fight corruption and fight all the nepotism, all these embezzlement and all these things that are happening. It's our responsibility. China is not going to do it for us. We have to do it. Otherwise, we are going to be always in a position, even though we build infrastructure, at the end, we can't repay the loan. Guess what? Those infrastructure are going to be repossessed by China. And that's the issue that we're facing. So we cannot go in those kind of negotiation. What I was saying at the beginning was that we can't go into negotiating with China on a bilateral basis. It's very difficult. We don't have the leverage to be able to change the terms of the loans. But going as a unison, you know, we're better equipped, therefore, to change the terms of the loans and sometimes the repayment terms and things like that, and that allows us to be able to have breathing room, you know,
Absolutely.
to be able to repay those loans in a way that allows us our country to exist.
Mr. Ekeu, while talking now, I was listening keenly, and of course, a question just came to mind. I don't know if actually it has its place here, but from the economic perspective, I'll appreciate if you actually throw more light on this. We are still on the aspect of borrowing by African leaders, and of course for infrastructure development and others. What actually is the underlying thing that makes it difficult to repay these loans? Because when we go, we see that about Kenya is owing China about $6 billion, and we cannot highlight the other countries. But then these loans are you know, taken for infrastructure development. What makes it difficult for the loans to be repaid? Is it the financial structure of you know, the global financial structure that makes it difficult for African countries to, you know, to have this money as fast as possible to repay the loans? Or is it the fact that Africa lacks you know, financial independence or a common currency that will actually compete with you know, foreign currencies to be able to help it you know, finance all of these loans which are taken for developmental projects in Africa? Or is it, you know, mismanagement or maybe embezzlement of funds?
I think it's all of the above, Clarisse, really. I mean, all of the above are issues. You know, poor management, you know, it's the issues, the poor leadership, poor negotiating skills. You know, we go into those, we get these loans, you know, for political purpose. And all of the above are really the issue that we are facing in order for us to be able to repay those loans back. You know, and I mean, you name it, you know, whatever, you know, a political leader wants to get power, he wants to fund his campaign. What he does, he's going to find a way to embezzle the funds from the government, from all kind of, you know, parties to be able to fund his campaign. And once he gets to power, then they put deals together, you know, to get those people who funded his campaign some position on the government, with a ministry position, whatever position that, you know, the people who funded his campaign want. And then at that point, it's a cartel. It's a cartel of people that are running the country because they have the same interest, and so they don't want to, you know, they're supporting each other's back. When it's time to pay back the loans, you know, that they've, you know, taken from big financing companies like in China, in the United States, in Europe, the money is not there because they have embezzled other money to pay back all the debt that they owe each other. So it's a classic system of corruption that exists, and also there are complex creditor. You know, the structure of African debt has evolved over the years with a significant portion of that debt that's owed to commercial creditors, which complicates debt settlement as well, you know, in terms of debt settlement processes. So the presence of multiple creditors, including bilateral, multilateral, as well as private lenders, also contribute. All these have different terms and conditions that are making, everything very complex. And so it's very hard to manage those debts and make the repayment very challenging to those countries. And also many loans, extended to many countries in Africa come with short-term repayment periods, which are, like I said earlier, which are not aligned with the long-term nature of the infrastructure that have been built. So this mismatch can really put a very important strain on national budgets and lead to financial instability in many countries. And so the case of the countries that you mentioned, it could be one of these. It's a combination of one of all of the above that we mentioned earlier. So you see, it's very complex. And so the conditions of the loan, the repayment terms, the details. This is why the devil is in the details. If the details of the loans are not clear, we are going to be in a situation where repaying back those loans, even if we do everything that is correct, there is no corruption, the money is not there. But look at the periodicity, for example. If they tell you, okay, you have to repay this loan within 5 years, and you can't do that because you have budget constraints, you have economic issues, you have to, take care of the population, pay your employees, pay the government civil servants, all that, and then you have to do so much, but you don't have the means to be able to repay the loan within a 5-year period. What happens? Then you have to, relinquish, the position of ownership that you have to and then pass it on to the company that owns the asset. The party who funded the asset or the infrastructure. And so that's why those infrastructure are being retaken by Chinese companies and other companies, because we get to a point where, because of so many different issues that we have, those loans those infrastructure are not under our control anymore. So that's the few answers that I can give you. But so many reasons, it's very complex. That's why we need to go, in unison. Because if we don't go in unison, we go alone, we are going to be ripped off. We are going to be ripped off, and that's what we see.
Absolutely, yeah. Just to remind our viewers, Mr. Ekeu, that of course the program was not just to downplay the relationship between Africa and China, but it's to see the added advantage that Africa will have if it maybe engage in a collective manner rather than engage at individual level. Of course, it is applaudable, the relationship that the continent is engaging, be it with China, with Russia, and other countries that have seen the reason to engage highly with the African continent. And given that it is happening at the wall of many global changes, it's a call, of course, for African political leaders to be more intentional about how they engage at the international level, and of course for more practical reforms to be brought into the functioning or the strategic planning of the African Union to ensure that we can, leaders can, their beautiful discourses concerning issues of utmost interest can be translated into practical actions that will define a solid trajectory for the continent Africa. Let me come back to you. We still have just 2 minutes, Mr. Ekeu, for a concluding statement pertaining the ongoing China-Africa summit, that is for 2024 FOCAC, and to ask if maybe coming 2027 we'll be seeing Africa attending as an entity and not at individual levels.
Wow, that would be great. That would be fantastic, and that's what we want. I don't have a crystal ball to tell you what's going to happen between now and 2027, but I think that would be great, because like we've seen throughout this program, going alone is not a solution for Africa. We cannot win. We can't win like that. We don't have We are very weak, small countries, and on the scale that, China, United States, Europe is negotiating, we are small countries, we can't win those kind of negotiations. So we have to go at the same, we have to form a very strong partnership, a strong unity first within Africa, and then go in, at these different summits with one voice, one representative of Africa that will speak, on behalf of the continent, and negotiate, on behalf of the continent, the terms, the different financing options and the different solutions into our special needs. And then that has to start by uniting within our regional different regions that we have. We have different regions in Africa. We can that has to start there, and then going up, in a way that allows the African Union Commission or whatever who is going to be in charge to go in those different meetings with one, with one person representing the continent and discussing the interests of all the different regions.
Indeed,
right. So that's the only way we can achieve the level of success in those kind of partnership that we're looking for.
Thank you so much, Mr. Achille Ekeu. Indeed, there is beauty in diversity, but of course, there is also a greater scope to exploit when we are united. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your insight on our topic for discussion this day. And it is on this note that I will draw the curtains into today's edition of Global Insight on For You Media Africa. But don't go away, keep having a lovely moment in the company of our transmissions. Of course, in a moment from now, you'll be watching Point sur l'actualité in the French language. Thank you so much and stay blessed.